It's been an awful long time since we've said hello to Monte Poole, who you watch covering the Golden State Warriors all the time on your TV. He's nice enough to join Ray and I here on the radio, talking about the Warriors, the trade deadline, and a little bit of history that's coming up in the next couple of games for LeBron James. Monte, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm good. How you guys doing?
It's really good to have you. Monte Poole on the Bud Light guest line. All guests appear on the Bud Light guest line. Bud Light, easy to drink, easy to enjoy. Got to get that sponsor in there, Monte. You know how it goes.
Free Bud Light?
I wish I could give you a sixer just for joining us. I really could. I really do. Let's talk about the game that we saw last night. And I don't know if we can point to any one game and say there's a fork-in-the-road game for the Warriors, because any progress seems to be followed by a little regression within a handful of games. But maybe, maybe last night was a little sign that this team has what it takes to survive Steph Curry's absence and maybe even come in a couple games north of 500 while Steph Curry is out here. That was a good performance over a not quite ready for prime time Oklahoma City Thunder team. And, Klay was fantastic. Jordan Poole was fantastic. Draymond was fantastic. And Wiggins looked good.
Yeah, I mean, the Thunder, they're not a bad team. They're just young. They're talented. They're going to be good in a couple of years. Right now, they're mediocre, but they play hard and they didn't quit. And so the Warriors, when Klay plays like that, the geometry of the game changes, and the defense have to figure out, okay, are we going to double him? What are we going to do? And doubling a guy who plays off the ball ain't as easy as it sounds. It just doesn't always work. And so, I think the keys for the Warriors in terms of their current roster, for them to hold on and stay in pretty decent position is three things. You saw what you saw from Jordan Poole last night. I think that's first and foremost, because he's now the playmaker. He's the ball handler, and 12 assists for him is phenomenal. He had 4 turnovers, but they all came in the garbage portion of the game in the second half. So I think seeing him get 21 points and 12 assists, that is, everybody was saying that was the best game they've seen him play, and I wouldn't argue that. So you don't expect that every night, but the fact that you saw him actively making his teammates look good and making them better over the course of the game. So that has to happen. Jordan has to play well and not be a turnover machine. 2, Klay has to be efficient. Last night he was out of this world efficient. That's not going to happen every night, But if he can shoot in that sort of 50% overall range, 40% from 3 range, they'll take that and run with it. And the third thing is Andrew Wiggins has to find himself. I mean, there are signs that he's coming along on offense. His defense is still not where it was last year. So other than that, I think, Loon just has to be Loon. Draymond has to keep doing what he's doing. The bench has to keep doing what they're doing. If those 3 guys play decent basketball over the next 3 or 4 weeks, the Warriors will still be in pretty good shape to get a top 6 spot.
The issue, though, for the Warriors in general, not picking out one guy, but all of them, is that they can't get a roll going, that they don't have games like that, like 3 times out of 5, and they don't get on a 6 wins in 8 games kind of heater. Does it look to you, after 54 games, like they're capable of that, or is this just going to be a grind game in and game out till they get to the end?
They're capable of that when everything goes well, which hasn't happened very often this season. Last night's win was the only time this season that they've beaten a team by more than 25 points that wasn't named the Spurs. And we know the Spurs are a tank team. So that kind of runaway just hasn't happened much this year. And they yet to be 3 games over 500. If they win tomorrow night, they're 3 over 500 for the first time this season. So they've been locked in the mediocrity the entire season, and it's hard to see this team getting on a roll without Steph. But their schedule is fairly friendly coming, before the break. 4 more games. Like, the Clippers are going to be tough, but 4 more games against teams they're beatable teams, beginning with tomorrow at Portland. So. They're all games that can win. The Lakers, they can win that game. So now the question will be, how long will it take before Steph gets back? And it sounds like he's probably going to be back early to mid-March. And if you look at that, you're talking about a span 4 games before the break, another 6 or 8 after the break, and then maybe you look for him to come back. If the Warriors can win can go, say, over the next 15, go 9-6, they'll take that, because that means they'll be 5 over 500 for the first time all season. So, but if they go 6-9, then they're in deep trouble. They're in deep trouble. They're looking at a play-in berth, and obviously that's not something they want, because your season then comes down to one game.
Monte Poole with us here on 95.7 The Game. If defense is effort, how come the Warriors don't put forward the requisite effort to just shore that up a little, night in, night out? It's hard to criticize Steve. This team's had so much success under him. But does his voice still ring in that locker room the way that it used to? And, is his message now falling on, slightly deaf ears?
I don't think that's the issue, because it's a veteran team. And the three vets, Klay, Steph, and Draymond, they're all with Steve. And so as long as the three vets are with the coach, then the coach's voice is going to matter. So I think that's not the issue. But Draymond said something a couple of weeks ago on his podcast that kind of, I think, has certainly at least an element of truth. And what he said was that he realizes that what happened between he and Jordan in the preseason took away some of his leadership tactics. He has to be more careful about how he moves in terms of motivating guys and getting guys to reach the next level. Whereas before, he could go in and just yep at people, and get maybe a reaction. After that, guys might look at him a little bit differently. And so he's trying to figure out a way to navigate that and still be the leader that he has been all these years, while at the same time being aware that that one incident was so dramatic that, that changes the way people look at you and the way people may take what you say to them. So he just has to be careful. And I think that's one of the issues that has hurt the team this year, is that he hasn't been as effective a leader as he has been in the past. And you see it on the defensive end. He's playing good basketball, but his voice isn't really reaching some of the guys that as well as it did before. And basically he's saying part of that's his fault, because he's still trying to figure out the best way to do that. And I think you can see that on the defensive end a lot of nights.
But how much of it is supposed to be his responsibility? I mean, the veterans know how important defense is. The younger guys have been around long enough to get the message, even if it doesn't come from Draymond. So what's the bulk of the breakdown? Is it that they're not as good a defensive team? Are they starting to age out a bit on that end of the floor? I mean, is it really about leadership, or is it about something else?
No, it's a combination of things, but Draymond is still an elite defender. Kevon Looney is still good at times. He has more difficulty staying in front of guys than he did a couple of years ago. So I think that, you guys are getting to the rim on him that before couldn't. And Steph, when he's out there, the effort has been good, but his defense has been okay. Klay he's been inconsistent. He's had some tremendous defensive games. He's had some other defensive games where he's out there running in circles and who's he guarding? So you're not sure what he's thinking and what he's doing. I mean, the Boston game example at Chase Center, when, he basically put Jason Tatum in jail. That's the kind of game you want to see from Klay on a regular basis, and you just don't see it on a regular basis. And Andrew Wiggins
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, Andrew Wiggins last year, the other guy I was going to mention. Wiggins last year was a really good defender. This year, it's been hit and miss. And so it's not that they can't, it's that they haven't. And when you see a team that hasn't been able to do it over this deep into the season, you do begin to wonder how far they can go in the postseason.
Monte Poole with us on the Bud Light guest line. So do you think the Warriors throw their hat into the ring before the trade deadline, or are we looking at the team?
No, their hats in the ring. They're definitely, looking at something to do. But, just because you want to make a deal doesn't mean you find the right partner. And I think what the Warriors are trying to figure out and what makes it hard for them is that it's not so much about what they can get. It's about who they'll give up for what they got to get, what they're going to get. And they're reluctant to trade James Wiseman still, because they still see his upside, even if it doesn't fit with this specific roster. So they have to tell them, if they're going to trade him, they tell themselves, well, he's not a good fit for this roster, which he isn't, and we'll figure out a way to get a big man who fits the roster, whether it's in this trade or beyond. So, but when they drafted James, their thinking was he's going to be around for us. He'll be in his mid-20s when Steph, Klay, Draymond age out. And we'll have a big in the middle who can score, which he can do right now, and we'll teach him some defense. Well, that part's been coming along slowly and in fits and starts. So they don't want to, but it doesn't mean they won't. And other than that, you're looking at guys who basically aren't really getting much playing time because two things have happened in the last 3 or 4 weeks that changed their thinking. And that is, one, is that Kuminga's playing good basketball for the most part, and he's become a really good point of attack defender, which they really were looking at trying to get somebody to do that, fill that role. But he's been doing it pretty well. He wants the role, and he's been doing a decent job of it. So the need is not as pressing for that position, for that role. And the other, to me at least, is that JaMychal Green, who at the first part of the season didn't look good at all, now looks like he can contribute. I mean, he's hitting shots, he's rebounding, he's making defensive plays. So it doesn't mean that they won't. But having those two things happen in the last few weeks kind of changes their thinking about the urgency. So we'll see what happens over the next couple of days here. But no, there is no urgency to make a move, but I think they're still looking at someone who can show up the front court.
Slater reported today that the Warriors are now listening to offers for Wiseman, Moody, and I'm guessing that's got to be a package, right?
Yes. Yes. And why would they look at those two guys? Because, again, they're not really playing right now, and they don't know when they'll play and when they'll be in a rotation. And Wiseman, JaMychal Green's ascendance sort of affects Wiseman. And so that's going to be a factor there. And again, because Steph is out, you can't make a move because your leader is going to be missing for 3 or 4 weeks. That's short-term thinking, and it's dangerous, and it's a panic move. And the last time they made a panic move, it backfired in their face, and they didn't make the playoffs. That was the Kelly Oubre situation. So I don't think they'll go that route, make a dramatic move because Steph's out, and we need to get somebody. And so Wiseman, Moody, and a draft pick down the road, whatever. No, I think it'll be a smaller move, but I still think that they are determined to try and get someone who can help up front, and they need that, and we'll see what they end up with.
Give us 3 potential names that fit that bill. If you're using,
here we go with that game. 3 names.
Well, no. Or just give me one kind of player and use a name just so that we can envision it. Because what I'm wondering here is exactly what kind of trade value do you get for Moody and Wiseman, given the fact that they never play?
Well, you have to get whoever would take those two guys are thinking obviously for the future. That it would be a team that's not going anywhere this year, and there are a couple teams out there that are like that, and that's where you're looking at a guy like Poole in San Antonio, and you're looking at a guy like Kelly Olynyk in Utah. And they're different players, but Olynyk would be a good fit. His type of player in that he's 6'10", 6'11". He's a floor stretcher. He can shoot the 3. He's a good passer. He would fit the way the Warriors play offense. And Pirtle's a guy who's more of a factor in the paint, which to me I think they need that a little bit more. The way they're built right now is someone who can be a force in the paint. Pirtle's not a superior rim defender. He's a rim protector. He's not Miles Turner. But he's decent in the paint, and I think that's a guy that that type of guy would fit kind of what they're looking for. So, and those are 2 guys who could be available.
Monty, you getting any vibes hanging around the team as to what Bob Myers' future may hold?
Yeah, the vibe I'm getting is that people are nervous about it, and that speaks to. I'm just going to say if Bob were to leave. I don't know who in that building would be happy about it.
Well, there you go. There's reason to keep him around right there, I would think.
Yeah. And so I just don't. I think if he were to walk, I think there'd be a lot of people there going, okay, what do we think? What are we doing here? What are we doing here? Because think about it, and that championship they won last year was a surprise to most everybody. And usually that's when you give your general manager a bump. At that point, we won a championship we didn't see coming. Okay, here's your new contract, and it's a nice raise. Didn't happen. It didn't happen. So they're playing footsie with the contract right now, and I don't know if how active it is. I know they've been active at it. I don't know how active it is at this moment, but I do know that Joe Lacob has to be careful here because he should understand that Bob is not just popular with the players, but also with the people he works with because he hears them, he listens to them. And so, if Bob were to walk, yeah, I think the Trinity, and I'm thinking of Bob and Steve and Steph, the other two guys will not be happy. And if Steph is not happy and if Steve's not happy, then you got to question why you would do this. So I think they'll figure out a way to make it work if Bob himself wants to do it.
Well, then let's ask two questions. Does Bob Myers want a bump into an area where Joe Lacob all of a sudden starts worrying about the one thing he's never worried about before, which is money? And secondly, if Joe Lacob is doing this because he thinks that it's time for a different look in the front office, how aware is he of the collateral damage, and does he seem to mind?
Yeah, well, I think to the first question, it's not that Joe is not aware. I mean, not concerned about the money, because there have been some decisions made that showed that money was a factor, and Gary Payton II was being one of them. Not re-signing him was a money move. But I'm going to go back to the Oubre move a couple of years ago when Klay Thompson had the ruptured Achilles. The Warriors felt, oh my God, we got to do something. We got to be competitive this season. We got to do something. And they overpaid for Kelly Oubre. And I say overpaid because, there was his salary, and then there was this massive salary tax penalty that they had to pay to get him. It was between $70 and $80 million that it cost them. And they did that, and Joe authorized that. I mean, and so it was one of those things where, and it wasn't a unanimous decision to make that move, but in the end, they made it. And so I think now, yeah, that makes it look like money isn't an issue. It is. But after that, it may be a little bit more of an issue because of the way that turned out. So in terms of Bob's contract, if it's another $1 or $2 million, that shouldn't make or break the deal for Joe. The Warriors are minting money. Look at the latest valuation is between $7 and $8 million. I think it is. It's $1 billion.
Billion, yeah.
Yeah, 8 with a B, yes. So it's not that. They're expanding the empire. They got Golden State Entertainment. They're doing all these things. So I don't think you want to quibble with this. This is not like, when Jerry West left, there were people who were like, what are we doing? But they kind of understood it to a degree. They felt maybe the front office needed to grow and had, I won't say he'd outgrown its usefulness, but they reached the point where they needed the front office to kind of do what it does, and they thought, okay, now is a good time to make that move. Again, it wasn't the most popular move, but they made it and they survived it. But if Bob were to leave, because Bob is the one guy in that building who can walk into any office in there and be listened to, and also make someone comfortable enough to believe they can talk to him. And every great company has somebody like that who can do that, who can walk in any office in there and be respected, heard, and also lend an ear. And Bob is that guy. And I don't know if he leaves, I don't know who does that. I don't know who does it.
Ray Ratto's our guy here at the station. When everyone is feeling down, we send him in, Monty, to give him a little pep talk.
No doubt, man. When Ray comes, everybody listens. And, of course, we all know Ray loves us all. So, yeah, we got to talk to him like he's our daddy.
Thank you so much. Great to talk to you.
That was creepy.
All right, guys.
Monte Poole with us here on 95.7 The Game. Always great to have him on here. Yeah, Postman and Capitola said, great guest. Have him on more often. Indeed. He's great.